Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, and all sorts of books. I am not in my usual setup today, but I have to film this review on the fly, and I'm talking about a very different type of book today, and that is The Bursford by Will Carver. This is not a book that I ever would have picked up on my own because it's a horror book and I don't really read horror outside of Stephen King. But I won this book in a giveaway from my friend David over at David's Book Reviews. I will link his channel in the description box below. He's a wonderful booktuber and a pretty great friend, so please go check out his channel if you have a chance. When I won the giveaway from David, I got this book and a second book. I did a poll in my community tab, and everyone voted that I should read this one first, and I am so glad that I did because this book, which I had no idea what it was going in, turned out to be an absolute delight, So the setup of this book is it starts out with a young girl. She is just getting out of her hometown. She comes from a very small town that's very sheltered and contained, and now she's out on her own. She's moving into the big city, and she just happens to come across an opening at this apartment building complex called the Bursford. It's got rooms for rent. It's very reasonable. So she moves into the Bursford, and immediately she becomes friends with her next door neighbor, this young boy named Abe. We find out very quickly that Abe is a killer because he has just recently killed the person that used to live in her apartment. I'm laughing, but yes, the whole premise of this book is that people move in and out of the Bursford at various intervals throughout the book, and they all get murdered. That is the plot of this book. Everyone gets murdered at the Bursford. Everyone who moves in only stays for a certain amount of time. They end up getting murdered. Someone moves out, someone moves in, and then that person kills someone else moves in. It's just like this cycle of killing that is going on at this place, and it is wonderful. It is wonderful because this book, not only is it horrifying because there's a bunch of murders going on, but it's also hilarious at the same time. It is hilarious. And it's really hard for me to explain why it's so funny, but it's just the way that it's written. It's written in this way that it's almost like a parody. Like there's real murders happening, but it's almost written like it's a parody of a murder, which is really bizarre, but for some reason it just really works here. Now, not only are these different characters coming in and out and being murdered and killed, but there's also like chapters that are spaced throughout this book that just talk about like life type stuff, and it's really fascinating. And I'm gonna find one to read so that you understand what I'm talking about because it doesn't make sense unless you actually read it. Okay, so about 30 pages into this book, there's this chapter that's called What Do You Want? And I'm just gonna read it to you. It's only a page, but this will help illustrate what this book is like. So, what do you want? It should be simple. What music do you like? Well, definitely not Coldplay. I can't stand them. Their first album was great, but they're awful after that. And no ABBA. In fact, nothing from that ilk or from around that era or from that part of the world. Everything in the charts is so manufactured and insipid now. I prefer to drive in silence these days rather than having the radio playing. You want to put a film on? No sci-fi. I'm not in the mood for that at all. I'm sick of all the romantic comedies coming out of Hollywood at the moment. It's the same old shit. Even the people in them almost look identical. Hey kids, what do you fancy for dinner tonight? Not stir fry, we hate stir fry. And not that horrible pasta sauce you did the other week either. And definitely not soup again. What do you want to be when you grow up? I don't want to work in an office. Where do you want to work? Not a big corporation, but not a startup either. So a reputable and established independent company? Not in the city. Saying what you want, what you don't like, what you don't agree with is so much easier than the opposite. Deciding what you do want, the things that interest you, and standing for something requires belief. Belief in yourself, belief in something higher. Not committing to something that you want, no matter how small, does not protect you from never obtaining it. It prevents you from ever starting. leaving you to walk through this thing that you call life like it's purgatory. It is your waiting room for death. Start small, keep it simple, have a go, or go to hell. Can you say one thing that you do want? We want to belong. So there's like these chapters randomly throughout the book, and it's written in the first person, but I have no idea like who's talking here. And it just has these like little bits of wisdom and stuff that are so bizarre. It's almost like they don't fit in the story, but once you read enough of them, you see that they do actually fit and they do actually make sense, and they have to do with like what the characters are thinking and feeling. And I think that's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. And the fact that they have these like chapters that are kind of silly in between these chapters with these horrible murders going on, it's just brilliant. And let me just talk about the murders for a minute, because this is a true horror book, and when it talks about the murders, it goes into detail about how the characters A, commit the murders, and then B, how they get rid of the bodies. And let me tell you, the book does not hold back in its description. So for example, one of the bodies has to be like cut into pieces and dissolved in acid, and it's very descriptive. Like, it is descriptive. So if you have a bit of a weak stomach, just be warned about that. Be warned about that. So it sounds really bizarre to think of dissolving body parts in acid and have that be in a book that is also super funny at the same time. I really don't know how to explain it. It's just one of those things that you have to experience. Just trust me when I say, if you are someone that likes when horror and humor like cross, you have to check it out. Like, again, I never would have read this one. I never would have picked it up if it weren't for David. Now, the only small complaint that I have about this book is that I'm not a super big fan of the way that it ends. And some people might like the ending, but I did not, because here's the thing for me. I feel like the majority of this book is very much based in reality. These murders happen, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing supernatural about it. There's nothing magical about it. It's very much based in the real world and based in reality. However, at the end of the book, there is something that is revealed that kind of changes that a little bit, changes it in a way. And I feel like to throw that element in right at the end kind of takes away a little bit from the book. I feel like if you wanted to throw that in, you could have done it in a way that made it more like mysterious, like maybe you questioned whether or not there's something else going on beneath the surface. But the fact that it just kind of gives you the answer, I don't know. I felt like that was like, I don't know. I didn't think it was the best ending. Anyway, that's just the way that I feel personally. Again, someone else might feel different, but that's just how I felt. But to end this on a positive note, again, just to recap the things that I really, really liked about this book, I love the way that it's written. It's written in such a unique style that I've never read anywhere else, that I absolutely loved it. B, I love the humor of this book. I love the way that it takes a horrifying situation and makes it super humorous. And I think the characters are great too. Every single character that comes in and out of the Bursford, we get to learn about their lives intimately. Starting with the first one, we get to know exactly why she's at the Bursford, why she had to leave her home. Everyone that comes in and out, we get to know their hopes and dreams, their wants, why they're there, what they're hoping to achieve. We get to know them all. So I guess sometimes that makes them dying like more like sad, because you know them and you want them to be okay. But it also makes for a really entertaining read. So at the end of the day, again, horror plus humor. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a really fun read. If you're looking for something in that genre, I know it's not for everyone, but if you need something like that in your life, or if you just are in the mood to try something completely different from anything you've ever read, I would definitely recommend The Bursford. It has my stamp of approval. That's all today for my review. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more book reviews coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.